Welcome back to Framework. This is John Bernhard, and speaking with me, as always, Al Schwartz. How are
That's
you,
me.
Al?
I'm great.
And
We're looking forward. We're wrapping up the QT question today.
That's right. We're going to answer definitively the QT question. That is, of course, the end of our career retrospective, filmography review of Quentin Tarantino. What have we been doing exactly? What would you call this?
A pre-death posthumous look at something. I don't know.
We watched all the Tarantino movies.
Yes, and now I guess we're going to rank them because that's what you kind of do.
Yes,
when you
I'm
undertake
so
a project
excited.
like this. Let's get started right off the bat. What's your lowest ranking Tarantino? What's
Okay, now we talked about 11 films.
I have
in
12 because I have Dusk Till Dawn included.
Okay, you included Dusk Till Dawn. That was the question I had. I did not include From Dusk Till Dawn on my ranking because we didn't have a full episode on it, but I know where it goes, so I'm placing it in now.
Yeah,
for 12. This does include
True
Romance as well, of course.
Yes,
which is my number 12 movie.
Oh, really?
Is my least favorite of
We're
the
leading
films.
off with our biggest difference then. True Romance is pretty high on mine.
I know. This is a big one. I think that has surprised me. But yes, ultimately, I think True Romance is my least favorite of the films that we are calling Quentin Tarantino films, and it's a really good movie. Is the thing? None of these are bad. These are all like 3 stars minimum. I've enjoyed all these films to some extent. They're all good, but True Romance is kind of my least favorite.
True Romance, for me, it was hovering between 3 and 5 on my list because it was neck and neck with the Kill Bills, and I wasn't sure how to. I almost put True Romance above them because I think it's a more complete unit than either one of them, but I don't like it better than both of them as a whole. But yeah, I mean, is your complaint about it that it's not Tarantino-y enough?
Oh, it's very Tarantino-y. I mean, it's extremely Tarantino. Yeah. It's, again, a movie I like a lot. It is it's a bit indulgent, and it speaks to me more as a teenager than it does to me at my current age, I would say, 20 years later. That's just sort of one of those things, that as I've aged, some of these move down resultingly. And I think you'll see that, all the lower stuff on my list. But it feels, it's not that it's not Tarantino-y, because it clearly is. It's not, that somebody else did it. It just feels like a young man's fantasy, It feels like
Yes.
And that's nice, and that's good. That's a cool thing about it. It's just no longer what I'm gravitating towards, I guess, is how I would say.
I think that's something I like about it, I guess. That I don't know. It's certainly indulgent in that it is a young man's fantasy movie, but it's not indulgent in the way that his later stuff is, which is I guess I find more tedious. Where the later movies that are overlong and feel, I don't know, just
long.
flabby.
They feel long. Yeah,
True Romance is not flabby. It certainly has stuff. I think we talked about in that episode that you could cut out that Dennis Hopper, Christopher Walken scene entirely. Really, it's not necessary, strictly speaking, but it doesn't make the movie feel overlong or overstuffed. It's not what you would want to take out of the movie. It's one of the most famous scenes in his entire filmography.
I think this is kind of what it comes down to in a sense. All the best scenes in this movie are kind of great in isolation, more than collaborating to a larger story or narrative that I really give a damn about. This is a great movie to watch scenes out of context and just on their own on YouTube for 10 minutes. Watch the Walken Dennis Hopper scene, or the James Gandolfini scene, or Gary Oldman's performance. All these things are good, and they're all kind of quarantined to their own 10-minute sequence of True Romance. As to Clarence and Alabama, honestly, after the first 20, 30 minutes of the film, their story sort of falls to the wayside a little bit. It's there, but I don't. I'm not too engaged with that. I'm more interested in what Bronson Pinchot is doing, or
Okay, I can
Michael
see the argument
Rappaport's
that
career. Yeah.
they get a little overwhelmed by the story as it sprawls out there. The heroes of the piece.
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess so with that. But I don't know. I do feel like it actually. I think it does. Right? But one of the things that I liked about it that has moved it up my listing here was that it was a story with forward momentum that kept moving towards this, big shootout ending, and in a way that some of the other one, the what I think of as the indulgent ones, don't always feel like they're moving forward with a purpose. Like they're, Django or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood feel like they're kind of wandering around for parts before they like get back on the narrative track and start moving forward again. But True Romance, I don't know. To me, it feels like every scene is moving forward. Um,
It definitely has forward momentum, and it has that over some of those later films. That is true.
um,
It's an engaging, entertaining movie that does not take anything out of you to watch.
yeah,
I admit this. Yeah.
I would say what it's missing is Tarantino's visual styling, because it is a Tony Scott joint, and I don't know. I find Tony Scott's visual style a little not so fun to watch sometimes.
I less good than Tarantino's, perhaps. Less distinct,
Less lively, I
less.
guess.
Yeah, but he's definitely got a visual style. He's
Well,
definitely
he
got a
definitely does, but it's
look.
kind of
Yeah.
grimy, and
Hmm.
at least in that one.
Yeah,
Um,
oversaturated. And I don't know, maybe the extent to which Michael Bay has taken from it, you know, puts it into
yeah, that's
a,
true.
a camp with Michael Bay cinema, which
Um,
does it no favors per se.
yeah, but it has Floyd and it has Lee Donowitz, and those
And a bunch of
those are
other,
great
yeah,
things.
uh, Drexel the pimp, is that his name? All
Yes.
that stuff's a lot of fun. All these characters and performances are very entertaining. I don't know if it's anyone's best work or anything like that, but it's everyone having a good time, and it has a real '90s crime ensemble vibe. It's a good film. These are all good films. Is the is what I came away with. So yeah,
Yeah.
but number 12 on my
Okay.
list.
My lowest one
Hmm.
is going to be Django Unchained, and
Yeah, no surprise there. Okay.
um, okay, so Django, as we talked about, I think it's one. I think it was hurt the most for me in rewatching it for this
Hmm.
podcast. There's some of them that went up in my estimation, and then some that went down. And I remember liking Django quite a bit in the theater, and it drug for me at home more than I remembered. As we went into exhaustively in that episode, I don't need to rehash all of that, but
Not a fleet-footed film.
no,
No, it is. It's a long sit, and I would have to agree. It's probably the one that least deserves or requires to be a long sit of his longer films.
yeah,
It's the lengthy one. Yeah.
it's a movie that has 5 acts, and it's not a 5 act structure.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
three
the
act
problem.
structure with two first acts and two third acts.
Right. I mean, we talked about this. It's not even the longest. It's
Mm-hmm.
I think there's three or four that are longer. And then it's just the worst structured, and it has the worst flow to it.
Yeah, and it's also got some of the most just upsetting, difficult to sit through parts of the
Yeah.
entire filmography, which is kind of saying something, um, considering some of the crap that goes down in the other films. But the dog scene and the Mandingo fight are both just absolutely excruciating to sit through.
Hmm. With
Um,
reason, but yeah, it makes it a harder sit, and it's already a long, difficult film in some ways. Of course.
yeah, but and it's still it's got two great villain performances. Um,
Hmm.
and at least one great hero performance from Christoph Waltz. I don't think Jamie Foxx is bad in the role. I just don't think that Django really works as they never. I don't think the movie nails down exactly what it wants from Django hard enough for Fox to really dig in and deliver on it.
I have to
Um,
agree with that. And this is why I was arguing that I think Will Smith probably would have
yeah.
been the guy for it. I think he kind of just brings that with him in some sense. Fox maybe needs a little bit more, and he's more of a character actor anyway, kind of thing. So
Well, it's really
yeah,
that Will Smith not being a character actor might have given Django more life and character, uh, just because it would be Will Smith's
yeah,
on-screen persona
yeah.
shining through. But I mean, if you shot the script as is with Will Smith, you would still have the issue of like not really being clear, like, you know, is Django 42 or is he 23? And is
Yeah,
he a
that problem's the
romantic
same.
hero or is he a stoic anti-hero that, we're not really allowed into his head, but we are, and I don't know.
Well, and again, Will Smith famously passed because he didn't think the role was as good as Dr. Schultz's. So
He's
problems on
right.
the
The movie
script
is
there.
much more
Yeah.
clear on who King Schultz is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I
Um,
think I think Will Smith's presence might have balanced the scales on that a little bit more. We talked about that in the episode,
you
but
could well be right.
yeah. Still, well, you'll see where it comes in on my rankings.
No.
Okay.
I think
Uh,
that's probably our biggest. I expect we'll have more overlap going forward. I think that's the biggest gap between us to start with.
yeah. Well, I think probably. Although I gotta say, my list surprised me when I put this down in order. I was like, I can't actually believe that's so low, but I guess it is. Which, well, actually, it applies to my next film quite a bit. We moving on?
Yeah. What's the next one?
Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs 2 was one that it dropped down my list farther than I
Yeah.
expected. Um,
Yeah, I got that at 11, the lowest of any actual Tarantino film directed. It's which is crazy because it was such an important movie to me as a teenager. As a kid, this was such a
yeah.
big deal film. Uh,
I have it at
I,
10, but very, very close. Um,
mm-hmm.
and right, that and Django were the biggest surprises to me that they did not hold up as well. Because I mean, you're right. Reservoir Dogs was a big seminal thing when we were teenagers,
Yeah,
and now I don't know. To me, I think it's the least humorous of the Tarantino joints, and
it
that
is funny, but
I
it's
mean,
it's that
it's
low humor. It's
yeah,
kind of teenager funny. It's the
yeah,
characters seem like teenagers in a sense,
they do.
which was a lot more fun when you were a teenager, and now when you're looking at a bunch of actors in their 40s and 50s, you know, I mean, I would make the argument that it is also uh, older than the cast, older than they are written characters here as well. Even if they're not explicitly supposed to be younger, they're acting younger. They're behaving like younger
Well,
characters.
yeah. I mean, you can argue that is a comment on like the emotionally stunted nature of criminals or some shit like that.
But it's
Um,
not though. It's
no,
it's it's not. It's because that's how old he was when he wrote it.
um,
And it's
but
still fun. It again, they're all good, but this one I was like, this doesn't hold up like it did
yeah.
for me.
The humor value though is it's very dependent on hearing people like curse and toss out racial slurs and
Inappropriate stuff. Yes.
nonchalantly, and yeah, and when you're 13 or 14, that's exciting for its own sake in a way. And you haven't seen very many rated R movies, and now it's like I don't know. The joke writing here is not that sharp once you get past the transgressive value. And I think that really hurts it on rewatches when like the sort of whodunit quality of the plot is no longer an animating force
Mm-hmm.
to keep you invested. Uh, yeah, just it feels like everything that does well, other subsequent movies are going to do better in some way, shape, or form.
I would say that's what kicked it down the list for me is that all the stuff on display here is improved on later.
Yes.
It's given a little bit more weight, a little bit more intelligence and maturity, and just it feels a little less gross to watch. In fact, I would say of all the movies here, the only one that doesn't age very well, the only one that kind of shows its ass in that regard is Reservoir Dogs. I mean, there's isolated moments in a few of the other ones,
Yeah,
Tarantino scene in Pulp Fiction, comes to mind immediately. But like, this is the only one that kind of is like, product of its time.
yeah, and maybe it might be too early to say how some of the later stuff is going to age. Like,
Well, of
maybe
course,
Hateful Eight and Django haven't finished aging yet. um,
I'm sure. Yeah. Hmm.
but their transgressiveness does feel more attuned, at least to our current, like, modern day sensibilities. That it's trying to shock us as we are now, not as we might have been in 1991.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean that's always going to be seen. I could see Hateful Eight having a similar evolution, unfortunately, or not. It might not go that way. But
well, I mean,
it's kind of a tough game to guess how something's going to age.
yeah, we talked about with Hateful Eight a little bit, how like just the Trump era uh, made it seem its racial politics seem more prescient um, than they
Yeah,
came off at the time, even. Um, but it may just be that the Trump era was set everything back a few years.
yeah, and
Um,
kind of just dumped nitroglycerin and everything and lit it on
yeah,
fire. Everyone feels a little bit more just like, ooh, that is more prescient now. Yeah.
yeah.
Look
But
at those fascist characters in Star Wars. Oh, that feels a little more prescient now. Yeah, like
yeah, is that a way of making everything ugly seem a little more insightful and like I said, prescient. So for me, my number 11, I guess, is Death Proof, um,
okay,
which
yeah,
going into this would have definitely been the lowest on my list, but it is one that rose on the rewatch as Django and Reservoir Dogs fell.
hmm
It's still not that great, uh, but it's got parts that are really great. Uh, if you're into car chases, it's definitely got one of the best that's ever been done. I mean, full
yeah.
stop.
That's a big deal. It really is a hell of a car chase, and I mean, yeah, this one I knew I kind of liked it. I would say I don't know. This was like the fourth or fifth time I've actually watched it, and it always climbs up a little bit. It always gets a little bit better every time I watch it. I didn't really like it or get it the first time, and now I'm kind of got to a point where I'm like, it's pretty good actually. It's just where do you find room above it? On the list. It's got a lot of competition in this resume. So as a result, it's going to be in the lower half of my
Yeah,
list too. But yeah, it's still I think a very solid film and kind of a unique one in his filmography.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it's hurt by I went back and forth on whether it or Django was the bottom, because for Death Proof, it's definitely one where I feel like, okay, I wouldn't mind rewatching it, but I also really wouldn't mind skipping the first half hour the next time I rewatch it. Um,
It's sort of a tough thing because I think the first half is the better half,
right.
but the car chase is in the second half.
Yes.
Yeah.
um,
You do
yeah.
have to reset. That's one thing about this movie. You kind of have to like reset what it is and what you're watching halfway through. And it's almost just like watching two 1 hour movies that are,
Yes.
I guess, kind of linked. And it doesn't make for the easiest thing to kind of prepare yourself for, I guess, when you can just pick one of the other films he's made,
Yeah. I mean,
or
for
a
me,
film
like,
more committed to car chases throughout, something like like a French Connection or a Ronin. If you really want to in a car chase mood, that's where you're
right,
going, probably.
or a Mad Max if you really want to go
Yeah,
all out.
yeah. Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. It's once Stuntman Mike shows up, things get more interesting. But I'm still going to want to fast forward anytime Eli Roth or Omar Doom are on the screen. Um, 'Cause there's just a lot of stuff in there that doesn't really add to the parts that I like. So yeah, that's I still
It's a
think that
very understandable position, I would
yeah,
say, and placement for the film.
but it's got such high highs, and eventually it nosed out Django for me because it just if I had to pick one to rewatch right now, it feels like less of a commitment
Yeah,
because
it's an
it's
hour
45
shorter.
minutes
Yeah,
shorter.
it's um, it also has Kurt Russell's great in it. Zoe Bell, best Zoe Bell performance in
Yes.
anything for sure. She's good in it. I would say it's a good Zoe Bell
Yeah.
performance.
I
And
mean, she
and
gets to
again,
play
you're
herself,
mostly just
which is
you're mostly just thinking like that thing she does in the car is pretty impressive. So
Right.
that helps. But
Yeah, and she doesn't have a character to play other than just herself. So that's my 2. Now we're up to 3, or well, bottom 3. Number 10 for you
it's Death Proof.
is Death Proof. Okay, so we just talked
Yeah.
about that one.
That's my number 10. Yeah.
My number 10 is Reservoir Dogs. So
Okay. Well, that
we've talked
fine.
about
Yeah.
that. So moving up to number 9.
Kill Bill Volume 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kill Bill Volume 2 for me is going to be number 4, but we've hashed out our differences on this to some degree. For me, really, my only complaint about that movie is when I'm rewatching it, the Esteban Viejo stuff and some of the Pai Mei stuff drags a bit for me. But I love, love, love everything with Bud and Bill and Ellie Driver and the bride. And
all of
that's
that
the
stuff is
whole
excellent.
movie.
All of that stuff is the high point of the film.
And I love David Carradine in that.
He's very good. He's terrific. I do think for me the reason why it's lower, and this one dropped in this rewatch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Death Proof almost beat this one. Honestly, I was really kind of having to decide between the two. But it's just that the big final conversation. What is it? 40 minutes of between Carradine and Uma Thurman. In rewatch, it just doesn't do it for me. I'm just whatever they're talking about. I'm kind of just like, okay, nodding along. It's and it really only comes to life when he gets to tell like his unifying Superman theory, and which is very Tarantino. It's good. It's all solid. I think it's a little overwritten and it feels a little stretched out. Like the result of deciding to make 2 films instead of 1, perhaps. I don't know, but it's there's a gap between the 2 for me.
I like all the stuff with them. It's a very exaggerated, cartoonish relationship, but there it is. I don't know, that swerve still works for me, from the over the top samurai sword bloodbath violence to these people just basically having a breakup, an argument about their bad breakup for 40 minutes. And as exaggerated as their positions are, I don't know, they make a weird sort of sense to me.
Yeah, it's not shit or anything, it's good. It's just it doesn't crack the top 10, best Tarantino scenes or anything like that for me. And given its importance to the 2 film arc, I feel like if the film really was going to succeed, that whole sequence would have to be excellent. And for me, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, well, excellent in my book.
Fair enough.
I know.
For a lot of people, I think most people prefer part 2.
I mean, it sounds so weird to like praise anything that weird and cartoonish for its emotional verisimilitude here, but I don't know. Like, they vibrate on a specific level of like exes that like still love each other to a degree, but they're definitely not getting back together. Like, and that
works. That does work.
Yeah. And I don't know. That's a tricky thing to pull off. And I don't know. It's something that resonates with me in real world terms, even though this is so clearly not the real world.
And I actually really like when a movie does that, generally speaking. I like that it does it in Kill Bill Volume 2. Again, this is a good movie. It's a movie I like. I've seen a number of times, and we'll see again. But just the way of like teasing out something real by placing it in kind of a cartoonish world.
Right.
This is why I like the horror genre so much. This is what that does at its best, and that all works for me pretty good, actually. I would say that's what keeps that part afloat, even as the dialogue is a bit overwritten, is that it is a stand-in for real world relationships.
Yeah,
and that works.
So moving along, for me, number 9 would be From Dusk Till Dawn.
Okay, makes
that's
sense.
one. That's one that kind of fell in my estimation just because I held it in really high esteem when I was a teenager, and it really just Yeah, for obvious reasons. It delights you as a teenager. Like, and I really
Hmm.
love the gonzo turn that it takes. Um, and uh, but watching it now, it's sort of the it becomes way less interesting to me. Like after the initial vampire attack, it sort of loses some steam for me. Like the the final action sequence is not nearly as fun or exciting as the earlier parts.
It
And
does kind of turn into Evil Dead clone, like not quite
yeah,
as good as Evil Dead clone regular movie, I guess. Oddly
but
enough.
I mean, it's just a weird, like, I guess that would be like a nitpicker on the grounds of realism in a movie like this. But there's kind of fun thing of them like arming themselves with all their sort of improvised vampire fighting weapons. But for the most part, they're really impractical, and it kind of kills a sense of danger to me that like Clooney's automatic uh, stake machine or whatever, like you might get
Not
one
practical.
with that,
Yeah.
but it's hugely impractical. You know, it's very convenient that Juliette Lewis found a crossbow, but it's when they're being swarmed in these pretty close quarters, like she's not going to get off more than one. Weirdly,
Hmm.
the super soaker is, and the condoms full of holy water is probably the most practical weapon, and it's just not very cinematic, no matter how you shoot it. To just watch a kid spraying a water gun around,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
not satisfying in a visceral action level.
it all kind of breaks down in the end as a result of just that they decide they're going to be this kind of movie,
Mhm.
simply in the sense that like you start thinking about how this world works and how this place works. Like if they're
Yeah,
not able to stop like some a couple criminals and a trucker and a biker, like that's these are the characters that show up, and the presumption is they've been doing this hundreds of years. So like the fact that
yeah.
they
The
all
other thing
get
is like,
brought down by this crew, I mean, it turns
and
into like a silly movie, a very silly movie.
yeah,
And
which is part of the appeal. Like,
yes,
I'm
yes,
not
it
upset that
is.
it's not like a gritty, grounded exploration of what this would be, but it does. It also raises questions to me. Like this happens a lot in different movies. I mean, is this? Do they happen to go there on like the one night every couple months when they have this big vampire feast, or are they really like? Are they killing 25 truckers a night in this place? Like, how are they getting that many people out there every night to the middle of the desert and
Yeah,
not drawing any attention? It's
we're
the
not talking
economy of
about.
it makes little sense,
Yeah, exactly. And that's fine.
but who cares?
Of the teenager movies, I would say this was my favorite one. The one that works best as a teenager movie. This was the one that kind of held up the most because it is so unabashedly one. You know,
Yeah.
it is purely just yeah, we're a big stupid vampire movie. How do you like that? And that
But I
is
like the crime
fun.
movie that you know predates
Yeah,
the vampire movie even better than I like the vampire movie.
I mean, I have to
That opening with
agree,
John
but
Hawkes is great. I think.
I agree that that's the better half, but I do love that it turns into the film it turns into. Like
Yes.
that it makes that transition is kind of unique and kind of thrilling, and it's not like it's bad. It's fun. You get good performances out of people like Tom Savini. Like
Hmm.
it's just it's entertaining. And it has that Evil Dead thing, where the gore effects are fun and they're reveling in them. So
Yes, and also the
um
Evil Dead thing
yeah.
where it continues to like escalate past the point where you kind of think that it's run out of
Hmm.
steam, or you think like you know what the movie is. And I'm kind of impressed when movies are able to like keep upping the ante. And as this, I think this does up through that first vampire attack and the aftermath, and then it's not the final like action climax fails to up the ante one more time, I guess. But so that was number 9 for me. What do you got in the 8 spot?
In 8, I have Django Unchained.
Okay.
It's a little higher for me because I think that the stuff it does well does really well. I like the performances a lot. The I think Samuel L. Jackson's character is kind of brilliant and
Yeah.
fascinating, and the fact that it goes there and it does it well and not in an embarrassing shoot yourself in the foot kind of way is very impressive. Um, Good stuff from a lot of those people, and all the individual scenes work for me. So I mean, I what that movie is like doing is all good for me, and I enjoy watching it. So I have it a bit higher, even though I can acknowledge its flaws and difficulties, but it's still a good film. One I just don't watch all that much, but I like it.
I will say this: I think one of the things that makes it frustrating to me as a watch is both that it feels overstuffed and too long, but also leaves me wanting more of certain things. Like I want more Samuel L. Jackson and more Kerry Washington
Mm-hmm.
from their characters, and I feel like they get sort of squashed into the middle of the movie that doesn't get to breathe as well as it might otherwise, because we had to have this really drawn out weird like opening that's almost a prequel to the movie before the movie
Yeah,
finally starts after an hour in, um, and then
yeah.
that just weirdness around the ending. But
The structure is a
Brunhilde should
disturbance.
have been
Yes.
more of an active character in that story, I think.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah,
Um,
like you only buy yourself so much by saying, well, it's like a fairy tale princess thing. She's like a Rapunzel.
mhm.
That doesn't make the character good.
No,
It just explains why you didn't come up with a character. It's-
yeah. Okay, so for me, number 8 is the appropriately enough the Hateful Eight,
oh,
um,
okay, okay.
and this is one that's got a lot of good pieces to it, but also very long and has some of that stuff that's just that
Mm-hmm.
that that dick sucking monologue is a pretty tough hang.
Hell of a thing, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But um, yeah, I don't know. It's paced awkwardly, and then the narration here is the most, I think, unnecessary narration of all of it,
Mm.
and it sticks in my craw. Like, just knowing it's coming, I just feel like that there's just no need for this. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty big supporter of Hateful Eight. All that stuff kind of works for me. Maybe not the narration, but all the other stuff I'm very on board for. It is one of the newer ones. I've seen it a little less, maybe as a result, because it's not a. I mean, again, not a teenager anymore. Can't just watch these things incessantly as I
right.
did back in the day. So now when I revisit Hateful Eight, I'm kind of like, yes, I didn't remember that specifically, as opposed to Reservoir Dogs, where I'm just like, oh yeah, that. Uh,
But there's also the
so
length thing. I mean, just on a purely
certainly,
logistical level, if you had 20 hours to devote to rewatching Reservoir Dogs, you could watch it twice as many times as you could rewatch Hateful Eight in that same time frame.
there is that. Yes. Yeah, but I mean, if I were to rewatch one right now, it would be Hateful Eight. I think he's
I mean,
kind of gotten
I
better at
put
this
it
shit.
above Reservoir
Yeah.
Dogs as well. uh,
Right.
yeah,
Hmm.
but it's one of the more interesting ones from the QT question standpoint, because it clearly has ideas that's kicking around, but
Yeah. I mean,
where it comes down on anything is kind of hard to articulate.
it is perhaps instructive in my understanding of how we're going to answer that question ultimately. Yes, it is definitely the one that is attempting the most in that regard, except maybe Bastards. And yeah, it is. I think a qualified success in that regard.
But I mean, do you feel like it's copping out to some degree to be to call itself the Hateful Eight and sort of be about how, well, ultimately everybody's in this is super hateful, and so we don't have to like really make a statement, a coherent statement about these race relation issues that we're kicking around.
Well, no, I mean, because I think that the Hateful Eight is stand-ins for us all. Like, is that? I mean, within the larger my reading of the film context, that as a microcosm for America, it's suggesting that America runs on hate,
Hmm.
basically, and so it's not just a way to hang it on them specifically. It is a mirror to America.
I mean,
Eh? Eh?
yeah, I can't say that it's not, but I also just feel like I don't know. It
Is that a
pings
bit much?
some of my bullshit detectors. Like if I was fudging an oral report in school about a book that I didn't finish or didn't fully understand, saying stuff like it's a mirror of America, like stuff that sounds good, but
Mhm. It's
I can sort of say
predominantly
it without understanding
concerned
what I mean.
with being characters and plot and drawing room mystery
Yeah,
and that stuff. That is what it really cares about, is doing those things well, plotting and characters, and that is what I like about his movies. So
yeah,
I think that succeeds on those first. Thematic stuff is there, but it's less why the movie's great, I think, than it is those other stuff. The performances and the way
yeah.
he's made this film. That's what I love about it. So yeah,
It
fair
surprises
enough.
me a little bit, having watched all these now, that he hasn't done more just whodunit stuff, um, outside of
Yeah.
Reservoir Dogs and this, because he seems to really enjoy it and be pretty good at it. Um,
Hmm.
like I think we mentioned this in the Hateful Eight episode, but I do really appreciate how it sort of does the like Murder on the Orient Express, everybody did it twist, um, but in a way that actually makes sense. It doesn't feel contrived. Like it's not
More than
everybody.
in Murder in the Orient Express. My God, yeah.
Yeah, it's not that everybody there is pretending to be somebody else, because they all have their own convoluted agenda and their own overly complicated charade that they're playing. They're all doing the same one, in a kind of haphazard way. But
Yeah.
since they're all on the same team, ultimately, the fact that that everybody did it makes more sense.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I kind of like that about it.
And you also have it's not explicitly like the Bruce Dern character is kind of in on it, but he's got his own
Right,
thing going. And then you've also got 3 of the 8 plus OB who
right,
are just not involved in it. Like it works and works in that way. Yeah.
right. But I mean, you still get the thing where it's not that it's the same type of twist where it's more than one killer. Maybe
Yeah, I mean, it
Scream
is
is a more apt
technically
comparison.
like
Uh,
all the people you're suspecting are involved.
yes,
Yeah.
and yeah, like I said, there's the contrived way of doing that, which or we talked about the movie Clue in that regard too, which is a comedy version of it, which is it's very fun when they kind of play around with that idea there, um, because it's this farce in that case where you don't have to take it seriously, and the fact that it's so goofy and convoluted is part of the fun. Here, because it's essentially a drama, I mean, as exaggerated as it can be at times, it is a drama, and you need to take the stakes seriously. Uh, it's a little more important that people are acting in vaguely uh, comprehensible ways. So yeah,
My number 7 is From Dusk Till Dawn for
okay,
the stuff we just talked about. That's honestly the big surprise for that for me was that it didn't drop more. Like that it was that it had the staying power it did. I had been a while since I saw From Dusk Till Dawn, and I was very pleased to discover that it still worked.
yeah,
I didn't expect it to, and it's pretty good.
it's an easy watch. It doesn't overstay its welcome. I mean, for as gross as it is, it's pretty. It's
Yeah.
not emotionally. It's not an emotional commitment,
No.
or too much of a time commitment. Okay, so my number 7 then would be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
Fair enough.
uh,
Hmm.
which I'm guessing you have higher. I mean, you must at this point since you haven't said it yet. But
Yes, I have it higher. Not a lot, but
okay,
yeah. Hmm.
and that one, we talked about that obviously in that episode, and I don't know. It's definitely indulgent to me. It's the one where it feels like I feel like there is a story here that could be told with a little more focus and clarity. Um, and I don't know, like the transition to the sort of like fourth act where they do the Italian vacation and then coming home and skipping forward 6 months. That whole thing feels kind of clunky to me. Like we did two
It's a bit
days
clunky.
in almost real time sort of thing, and then we jump forward 6 months and do another day, and it's I don't know. There's some great stuff to it though. Great performances, a couple great sequences, and then just some flab. Like I feel like it didn't ever quite nail down how to connect the ending that he wanted to do to the 2 hours that make up the main movie.
I can't disagree with that. I do think it kind of makes a virtue of some of the the things that it's not doing. That it eschews plot, that it isn't doesn't fit necessarily next to his other stuff. It has less interest in a lot of the things he usually does, and kind of just wants to chill out. You know,
I mean,
smell the air and take its
yeah.
time, relax. That I like that, and that would be when I would revisit it. That's what I would be coming for. That sort of loosey goosey attitude.
My issue with that though is that, I mean, one, I like plot and he's really good at it.
Yeah,
Um, so I kind of like to see that from him. And two, I think you kind of lose the 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 ability to say, "Oh, it's just a hangout movie." It's just like, yeah, because it kind of is just Hollywood dazed and confused for like 2 hours.
yeah.
But when you go for that big Gonzo ending, you kind of, I think, like lose the ability to say that, oh, well, it's not about plot. Like it culminates in this enormous, ridiculous climax that I think, I don't know, needs a little
Well,
more grounding to me, or build up.
well,
I don't know.
it's not all that set up plot wise.
No, I
it's
guess it's relying on our like historical knowledge to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, again, that does kind of feel like, well, this is how a Tarantino movie ends, to some extent, and
Yeah.
that's fine. It's those scenes are kind of bracing and shocking, just in the way they come at you at the end of the film there. But I kind of like that. I kind of like that. All of a sudden, I'm like, whoa, oh shit, oh my god, look at that, like that it plays that card at the end. I mean, that's the time to play that card, I would say,
But
after you've hung out for 2.5 hours.
yeah, I mean, you couldn't do it earlier, that's for sure. But when we talk
No,
about what
no.
we like about this movie, it's mostly how it's like not the typical Tarantino, you know,
Hmm.
hyper violent thing.
Or
Um,
heavily plotted.
yeah, and that's still like what stands out as the, uh, like the strengths of that movie. Um,
I'm not
and then,
disagreeing
yeah,
much with you here. I've got it number
no,
6. It's my next
oh,
film,
okay,
so I'm
yeah,
it's right up there. Yeah, it's
yeah.
real mid tier for me.
And I think for me too, as you went into in the episode, like it's just it. The ending is hurt for me by, I think, Inglorious Bastards doing it way better. So moving along, that was your number, or it was my number 7. Your
Yeah,
number
and my number
6.
6. So your number
My number
6 would
6 is
be
Pulp Fiction.
wow low, wow real low under
Yeah,
the Kill Bills. Wow, okay,
yeah. I feel like Pulp Fiction has more downtime, more stuff that I'm like a little eager to skip through.
wow,
Which
okay.
is the everything like where Vincent goes to buy drugs is like a really kind of long thing that I can skip right over.
Like it
And
all, Eric Stoltz.
and before he really
Career
like,
best work.
maybe from Eric Stoltz, that's right. I mean, I haven't seen Mask still, so uh
It's not as good.
no. Well, okay, fine. Eric Stoltz's later scene when they're dealing with the overdose, great. But in that earlier scene, it just goes on for a while. Nothing that interesting's happening. And then until he and Mia get to the restaurant, then they start really interacting and it picks up for me. But then like also the beginning of the Butch stuff until he really like sees Marcellus. Like I can skip on
Hmm.
rewatches. I can skip over all that. I can flip away, check the score of the football game or whatever during that part. Um, and Kill Bill has a little bit of that stuff with Hattori Hanzo or Esteban Viejo, where it's not the most exciting stuff, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like as big a stretches of it. Um, but Pulp Fiction, obviously, seminal movie, still really, really, really great. The ending, the beginning are fan friggin'
Sixth.
tastic.
Wow. Hmm.
Um, it's yeah, I don't know. And also like maybe it's the movie of these that suffers the most from parody and plagiarism.
Oh,
And
without a
just,
doubt, it became
yeah,
everything in it is iconic. Like
yes,
there's Simpsons episodes that are just about making fun of Pulp Fiction.
yep,
Like 30-year-old Simpsons episodes. Like,
right.
well, I guess probably not 30 years old. Pulp
No,
Fiction's
but
not 30. 20-year-old Simpsons episodes.
I took your point. um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and maybe it's not fair to hold
Uh,
that stuff against the movie, but my criteria for this was like, okay, if I was rewatching these, if I had to rewatch one of these
hmm
tomorrow, what would I pick? And I think both the Kill Bills edged it out because they're shorter as individual units, uh, but they're also part of a whole that makes me like them both better, and they don't have as much of that downtime.
Fair enough. I mean, it, it it is a film that I don't need to see anymore. I have to admit, like I've watched the shit out of this film. I've seen a lot of Pulp Fiction in my life, and so I can kind of. It's one of those like Monty Python and the Holy Grail things where the actual act of watching it is almost incidental at this point. I can just play it in my mind
Right.
and get it. So
Yes, there's that to
yeah,
me too. Watching it doesn't feel entirely necessary because
yeah.
it's already implanted in my brain. Um,
hmm
Maybe I should also say, okay, so just in terms of ranking things and listing things, it's something we do, especially on the internet, and it's kind of a fun exercise, but also like it's so arbitrary to me. Like, really,
Meaningless.
if I was trying to
Sure.
impart to you how I feel about these, I would put them in clumps. And now
hmm
we've gotten to the clump, like 2 through 6 on this list are all pretty interchangeable to me. Like,
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, it's all it's all really tightly bunched up here.
yeah,
Like I said, none of these are bad movies.
I mean, the
None
way
of
that,
them
like,
are even really like okay movies. They're all good to great movies. I
yes,
think.
like, and Django and Death Proof were interchangeable to me. It was, flipped a coin there
hmm
to say which one. I, um, but one thing I do also like, this is a personal peccadillo, but I hate it when people are listing things on the internet and they like cheat the list and like do ties and honorable mentions and shit for your like best of the year. I'm like,
You're destroying
just
your own list. It has to be
just
internal. Yeah.
there's nothing at stake. Just commit to it. Put a number next to it. It doesn't matter. There's never been anybody on earth that like would have watched this movie on a critic's recommendation if it had been number 9, but it was number 10, so they
Mhm.
decided not to. Like,
Yeah, yeah. But that's how they get you. They don't remember
yeah,
how you ranked Jackie Brown
yeah.
4 years from now, and then they'll run that right in your face.
Jackie
They
Brown is one that stayed right where it was on this rewatch. That I'm keeping it where it is, but
Hmm.
where I would have put it before.
Jackie
Um,
Brown moved quite a bit up for me,
oh, really?
all the way to
You were,
number 5.
yeah, you were kind of a
Yeah.
skeptic on Jackie Brown. When we
Yeah.
were going into it this time.
Uh-huh. I would say Reservoir Dogs was the biggest mover, but that was downwards. The biggest mover upwards was Jackie Brown.
Interesting.
And yeah, it's good. It's really good.
So you were number 5, my number 2.
Yeah. Jackie Brown. It moved up in my ranking. It's very good. It has a verisimilitude that his other films don't. That isn't necessarily a good thing always, but I mean, I think that the variety is a good thing, and it works. It's not necessary that it feel accurate. And again, it's not the most accurate feeling thing, but it has that dissimilar quality, and
Yeah,
that gives it its own energy.
it's got a
It's smart.
trio of just fantastic lead performances. All 3 of
It
them. I
does.
love them.
It sure does. I like the supporting cast too. I like
Yeah, De
how
Niro, Fonda, and
mhm.
Keaton are all.
I like the minutia of how a small time heist goes down. That's the movie
Mm,
basically. Like that's the what the cool thing it's doing, and it is cool. It's nice to see something lo-fi given
yeah,
unimportance. And that suits the characters, which are some of the more believable ones in the whole canon here. And yeah, it's a
yeah.
entertaining movie. It's
It's Tarantino doing a heist movie, which is a
yeah.
lot of fun. Yeah, I mean,
And
and
it has that Elmore Leonard feel, but also that
right,
Tarantino feel. It's a nice combination of his voice with somebody else's. It's yeah, I have nothing bad to say about this anymore. I don't
ah,
love it, but it's a damn good movie, no question.
Yeah, it is a little too low key to make it like easy to get really passionate about. To
I
really,
think that's really the thing, the issue with it, and that's why
yeah.
it doesn't have the esteem that some of the other ones do, perhaps because it's just doesn't have the fireworks that some of the other ones do. But
Which,
it's good. It's really good.
yeah. I mean, I think the thing about that, the lack of the fireworks, it means that it's really easy to recommend, even to people that maybe aren't that into Tarantino. But it makes it a little harder to like proselytize about it. Like, oh my God, you've got to stop everything and watch this movie. It's going to blow your mind. Like, no, it's not going to blow your mind. It's just going to entertain you, and you know,
Hmm.
it might change your view of Tarantino a little bit if you're like kind of an anti-Tarantino guy, maybe. I don't know. Um,
Maybe, yeah.
yeah, not going to blow your mind, but it's also not going to bore you. Not going to make you feel like you wasted your time. I don't think.
No,
Almost no matter who you are.
when I started this project, we were like, okay, we're gonna watch all the Tarantino movies and talk about them. I was mentioning it to a friend, or a group of friends, and I was surprised that somebody was like, "Hey, you're gonna love Jackie Brown. It's my favorite." And I was like, "Yeah, sure thing, whatever, man." And I kind of get that now. I understand the appeal of it. Like what the big Jackie Brown fans like about it. And I mean, to some extent, I still think it's you know you just don't like Tarantino that much.
Yeah,
So
but
is the dissimilar one is what is appealing about it. But
I think that's also
honestly,
totally fair, though. I mean, as much as we like his style,
yeah,
Tarantino is a lot, you know.
absolutely, yeah,
And if you're not vibing with him, yeah, then I can see how this is the one where you're like, oh, this is. You can still appreciate his style without being overwhelmed by it.
right, yeah. So it's good, and I would say going forward, I expect to. I don't know. It's probably gonna be a little while before I watch another Quentin Tarantino movie. To be honest, we just spent some time on him,
I think
but
that's
it
fair.
it wouldn't surprise me if the next time I watch a Tarantino movie, it is Jackie Brown because it's one I haven't seen as much, and it.
Yeah, you haven't run into the ground as
Yeah,
Pulp
exactly.
Fiction or Kill Bill.
Yes.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
my 5 is True Romance, which
Wow.
I edged out
Okay.
over Pulp Fiction just because I had a harder time imagining which scenes I was going to skip if I were rewatching True Romance tonight. Um, and because of how much I just love that Gandolfini performance, that one
Yeah,
scene.
that it's got some stuff. It does. Mm-hmm.
And also Bronson Pinchot and Floyd. Like, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
just really great fun performances in that, which I guess you could say of Pulp Fiction as well.
Yes. But no, it's fair enough. I mean, that's the one. I don't know. It's good. It's
Yeah, we
no, we
talked about it
talked
already.
about it.
We
We
don't
talked
need
about
to
it. Okay.
rehash it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I gave it the edge for having a little more narrative momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, I mean, it's not really fair to criticize Pulp Fiction for that because it is purposefully doing this collage style and not driving straight for the station at all times.
And yet,
And that's a
within
strength
the
of the movie,
stories,
really. Yeah,
yeah, within the stories, there's quite a bit of momentum, though.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
even
and
the.
like I said, but we're in this section here where these are completely arbitrary. I mean, if we had
Mm-hmm.
started this recording 10 minutes later, I might well have flipped these. It doesn't. It
All right.
really doesn't matter. I love them both. We're both.
Mm-hmm.
We're in solidly 4-star movies
Yes,
here. Um, and so, all right. So that brings us to your number 4 then.
it's Kill Bill Volume 1.
Okay.
Way farther down up the list from Kill Bill Volume 2.
Right. So for me,
That was a
three
surprise.
and 4 are Kill Bill Volume 1, Kill Bill Volume 2, and the most interesting thing I find here is how far apart you have those two. So
I was surprised too. I was really surprised. And I think what it was Kill Bill Volume 1 moved up this time through, and Kill Bill Volume 2 moved down a little. That blew my mind a little. Well, it didn't blow my mind that much, but it was a bit of a surprise. I mean, there was a time in my life where I definitely would have said Kill Bill Volume 2 is the better part of
mm,
that. But now I have found that what I've responded to most in the whole thing was the action,
yeah,
was the parts where it's just a Bruce Lee samurai movie. Like that's the stuff I really really like about it, and it's got some excellent shit in that regard, like all timer shit. The House of Blue Leaves sequence, it's amazing. It's just
yes.
fantastic. It's the best action scene of his career, I would say.
It is
Uh,
without exaggeration or any sort of sarcasm. Tour de force absolutely
mhm. Yeah,
defines that.
yeah. I
And
think Uma Thurman is clocked in with this stuff. Like
yeah,
the
she's
way that,
great.
yeah, like as an action star, I can't believe that they didn't give her more chances to do this because she's so good at it. Um, she and like in a way that, like in Kill Bill, she's so much better in this role than anything else she's done. Even her other good performances, I think
Yeah,
it's kind of insane how great she is relative to the rest of her career here.
it
Um,
is really. It's a great action hero role. Like
yeah,
it is a better, more rounded role than a lot of the the iconic action hero stuff that we get for Schwarzeneggers or Stallones and that type. Like
yeah.
part of that is it's related to her being a woman, but it's so much more rare for a woman to get that opportunity. But
And
it's
it's
put
such
to
a
use
physical
there.
performance, and and I don't know how much that's Uma Thurman and how much that's Zoe Bell, but I think it's a success of the film that I don't know that,
Yeah,
that like it is the bride, that is the character, and it
yeah.
works, and I think of it as probably give more credit to Uma than she may
I
deserve,
doubt
just because
we could
I'm
give Zoe
so
Bell too much credit for it. I'm sure that she actually deserves a ton.
yeah,
But
yeah, that's got to be true, but
but there is so much more than swinging a sword
mhm.
that is required to make that role work.
Right,
Uh,
but there's a physicality to it that I perhaps ascribe to Uma that maybe isn't fair.
right,
But she
maybe.
has that physicality. She's really quite striking doing nothing in this film.
Yeah.
It's I wish more movies like this existed. It's kind of the perfect version of this is the sort of film I loved back in the day, and I wanted to create what it felt like. You compare this to a Bruce Lee movie, Kill Bill Volume 1.
Hmm.
And I mean, look, I enjoy a good Bruce Lee movie, but as a film, it doesn't even
Yeah.
fucking compare. It's a much better film than any movie Bruce Lee made.
Yeah, it's improving upon its influences, and it's
Yeah,
putting that taking the parts of these grindhouse movies and kung fu movies that worked best and synthesizing them into a more complete actual film. Um,
yes,
Even though it is still an exercise in style,
hmm
without a ton of narrative creation to it. Like you mentioned earlier,
that's
that there was
fine.
a time when you would have said that Kill Bill 2 was the better of the two movies, and I don't. If I can project onto you, like I would agree with that. There was definitely a time when I would have defaulted to that uh, as a statement, basically because it's the one that has more substance that's
It
evident,
does.
and
Hmm
so I would have like felt that it was necessary to defend it. Like, no, there is more going on here, and now I guess I'm at a place where like, it doesn't need more. It's got enough style, and that
No,
style is awesome that it doesn't need a
substance
ton
is
more
not the be
substance.
all end all.
Right.
I would say the Kill Bill is a great example of that. Just the samurai sword dreamscape of the first movie, even the Hattori Hanzo scene, which is this
Mhm.
heightened version of familiar scenes, where
Yeah.
the samurai master has long pent up feelings, and we never even find out what his relationship with Bill was, but we see it all in just the way he writes Bill on the steamed mirror and just sort of trails off at the end with the
Yep.
L. It tells so much without telling anything, and it's cinema. It's pure. Um, I almost want to move this up now. God, I love Kill Bill Volume 1.
Yeah.
It's a great film, and yeah, it makes me sad he didn't make more action movies, more pure action movies. The only other one on
Mm.
his resume is Death Proof, you
Yeah.
know, and even that is just the one part, really.
I mean,
Kill Bill Volume
Django a
2 has
little bit,
more.
I guess.
I
It's not
less
really an
than I
action
want it
movie,
to
but
be. I
yeah.
want more action in Django. You know, like
Yeah.
he's so good at this stuff. I wish that was something like it feels like if Tarantino was young enough, younger, and like the kind of '80s action movies that really meant something to me.
Mhm.
The Schwarzenegger films or RoboCop or Predator, that sort of thing. I wish he'd make one of those. Something that felt like one of those, and bring all the stuff that the way watching those as an 11-year-old felt. Bring that into a new movie. That would be something I would be really into. And somebody probably will do that.
He
The
might.
next
Yeah.
version of Tarantino. But
Yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah,
there's still time for him to do
there is
it. I mean,
if it's a passion of his, like if it's something
right.
he cares about, then he would, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, that's it's a hell of a film. And
Yeah,
this is another one, I guess. I think more than Kill Bill going down, this one went up for me. I'm surprised this
yeah.
is over Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or Django, but it definitely is
I mean, it is.
for you
It's
too.
definitely
Yes.
style over substance, but it's like you only need substance if your style's not strong enough to just hold the movie up on its own. And it is something that knows exactly what it is, and
Hmm.
and just executes on a super high level the entire way through. Um, and what it is such a weird thing. Like it's easy to kind of miss that because it's so confident in itself and pulls it off. So
So then
moving up
my
to the
number
top two
three.
spots.
My
Or
number
no, you're
three
number
is
three. Sorry.
Hateful Eight.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, you
Which
have it much
high.
higher than I do.
Yeah, I know. That's a little high. I'm kind of like, that seems a little high, but I really do love the film. I think it's I don't know. I get the sense it's not anyone's favorite. It's not one that well, I mean, when we talked to Chris, he was one of his favorites.
Yeah.
So there's people out there, but I feel like the consensus is that it's a minor work and not one of his great films. I think it's my favorite thing he's done since Bastards for sure. It's a load of fun, and I think it's plays to his strengths. It's doing all the things that he kind of like. It's a good bridge between the younger Tarantino and the older one. All the things that I like about the early films and the later films in one movie. I enjoy it quite a bit. Uh,
I don't know that I would agree that it's a ton of fun. It's pretty ugly. Um,
that's another thing people don't agree with. Yeah, that's true.
yeah. Um, there are parts of it
It,
that are fun, and there. I mean,
certainly nasty film. Yes.
yeah. It's also really great. I mean, if you're into like I don't know, just filmmaking as a craft, I suppose. I'm sure that it's like pornographic in how you could just study the scene compositions and how things are, how he works the frame and different
Hmm.
people in different parts of it, and it's all in this one setting and just
The
how
experience
he
of
shoots that
watching it,
setting so many different ways at
yeah,
different times.
seeing it in 70 millimeter, and it's such an odd film for it to be his 70 millimeter one, because it's the one location for the most part. Is one of the better theater experiences I've had. I had a blast doing that, so that colors my my appreciation of it, perhaps. But I don't know. I mean, watching it in four pieces on Netflix this time, you know, was suboptimal, and that didn't color my. So I don't know. I think I just love the film. Actually, I think it really is that good. Yeah.
Yeah, if you just get rid of that narration, I think it might have jumped up a spot for me. But
All right. So
it's just intrusive to me. It irks
okay.
me.
So
That
your
and
number.
the 20 years too old thing, that is
I
just
like
rife
that.
with it.
I like all that.
Uh,
So your
um,
three was Kill Bill one.
yeah,
So okay.
the top
Well,
two, I think we now have
I think
narrowed it
we know
down.
what's up. Okay,
Yeah.
number two for me is Pulp Fiction.
Yep.
Mostly just because it's iconic and wonderful, and I've seen it a million times, and I never get tired of it. Even though at this point, yeah, I'm probably not going to sit down and watch it again because I can just do it in my head. But
Yeah.
it's
Yep. And number two for me is Jackie Brown. We've already talked about both those movies, so we can move on to our number one, which we're sharing, obviously.
yeah.
Uh,
We knew that though, right?
yeah.
We knew this was
Yeah.
going to be the one.
And this is now we're moving out of the clump. Like like I said, 2 through 6 are all pretty tight race there for me. But this was number one going into this. It's number one coming out of it for me. It was
Never
never
in doubt,
threatened to be
honestly.
unseated.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah, Inglorious Bastards is one of my favorite films. Just full stop.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if a top 10 favorite movies seems like an impossible task for me, but if I
Yeah,
were forced to do so, this would certainly be in contention for that list. This is an excellent piece of work. My
yeah,
God.
it's in the top
Uh,
tier. Like I said, the
yeah.
rankings are arbitrary. It doesn't really matter if it's number 3 or number 7 or whatever. They're all
Hmm. Yeah.
uh, but yeah, it's just fantastic. I mean, we have a whole episode where we just gush about it for an hour and 45 minutes or whatever. So,
Hmm.
we could go. I mean, you can go listen to that if you want to hear us just wax on about how great this movie is and how it is to the QT question. It is the one that makes the strongest case that yes, there is an underlying ethos to Tarantino's madness.
Yeah, I mean, it stands out in that way. I mean, it's all the stuff that is just like superficially entertaining and hilarious and provocative about his movies,
Yeah,
with sort of this undeniable like cinematic genius going on at the same time. That this Kubrick level kind of uh, god brain storytelling
yeah,
at the same time. It's everything you could ever want from a Tarantino movie, but at the same time is kind of this other thing as well, that takes on sort of just like almost sociological importance, like just within culture and
yeah. It
and
has a
this,
sociological thesis that
yeah,
that cinema is ultimately the like expression of the Allies' victory over the Nazis and how it just dominating the culture.
yeah,
How that
mm-hmm.
it's it's the history that the winners get to write. Um, and the great thing about this is that it ties all this in with all this stuff about like the history of European film. You don't have to give any shits about pre-war German cinema or even
No.
American cinema to follow the movie. It's and like on a plot level, on an emotional level, like and you know it does all that meta stuff without getting too, I guess, cloying about it or too like self-important about it. Because I mean, what I said just now sounds like it's pretty pretty dangerous for for filmmakers to be playing with that stuff. Like it's potentially insufferable to have movies uh, made by people who make movies about how making movies is the most important thing that any human can do when you think about it. Um,
Well, it's the most important thing for him to do,
yeah,
like that's obvious. Like this is what he put on earth to do. I mean, to whatever extent that's a thing. It's this is his thing. This is how he expresses any idea he has, and this
yeah,
is the movie that makes the argument that that's a great expression of art. Like uh this is
yeah,
the one that kind of this is his masterpiece, as they say.
yeah. How much more can we say about Glorious
I
Bastard? It's fantastic.
How much more
It's
can we say about Quentin Tarantino at this point, man? I mean, if assuming people have been listening to us all the way here,
yeah.
we just talked about all these movies individually for several hours, and now we just one more time talk about them all again.
Well, okay. So I mean, post Bastards, especially, he's moving into this area where he is playing with the same themes more and more, and it seems a bit more deliberate. But I mean, is he still ultimately just masturbating on screen? I mean,
Hmm.
with this
The
stuff,
the QT question, really.
yeah,
Uh let's say, um, I mean, try to be as sober in this assessment as possible. Um, I mean, in the sense that I don't know. Here's the thing. A director like Martin Scorsese is not going to get accused of this, But in a sense, what is he doing that's different? He's doing movies that are of specific interest to him and his worldview and his obsession with movies and the stuff that, has kind of defined him and his personality and his interests and his body of work. It's all just stuff that came to him naturally, you
I think
know? Uh,
the difference between the two, at least in people's estimations, is that Tarantino is more myopic about that stuff, and that his interests are in a lower level of art. They're not
Low
as
art. Yeah. I mean,
sociological.
is it snobbishness then? Because you can
Kind of.
reduce Scorsese to, like he cares about New York gangsters and God and
Yeah. Well,
their
yeah.
relationship to God. That's his stuff basically.
But Catholic guilt is
Yeah,
considered a more philosophical thing than
yeah,
musings about the quality of samurai steel or or
right.
the secret the murky honor code of assassins. That it's not like a really real world thing that resonates in the same way that the religious torment of Scorsese's subtext is.
Yeah. Hmm.
Uh, yeah. I think I have this theory that critics kind of don't know what to do with Tarantino to an extent. This had to do with why we were asking the question earlier on, like, how has Tarantino not been canceled with all of his like
Mm-hmm.
problematic elements? Um, and I think he kind of confounds movie critics because he is kind of a critic himself, and he makes movies that sort of head off a lot of these criticisms because he will just have his characters like speak whatever subtext there is out loud. Um, and I think this is like a weird thing, especially as the internet has developed. Um, it seems to me that a lot of film criticism on the internet uh, it styles itself as we are the translators of film. Um, click on this link, and I mean, in the lowest form, you see those things at the bottom of articles. That's like, you know, the ending of Eight-Legged Freaks finally explained. Um, and it's these movies where like, I don't think that there was really hanging questions about that, but there's a whole like,
They defeat the freaks.
yes, but you can draw larger parallels to that. Like, and there's also a whole subgenre of explainer videos on YouTube of things that are legitimately more like difficult to parse. That there's,
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't know if we did it on the podcast, but I know I mentioned to you one time that there is a 4.5 hour video of somebody methodically laying out like the subtext to the story underneath the story of Twin Peaks. That is, I watched over the course of like a month, but was surprisingly cohesive. Like, oh yeah, but that this thing, like the electricity is representing this, and it's about state of TV, and the creamed corn means this, and it actually hung together shockingly well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like good versions of that too. Um,
Now,
but
quick question on that: does that enhance your appreciation and enjoyment of Twin Peaks, though? Because it seems
I
to
don't
me
know.
that a big part of Twin Peaks is the sort of not knowing what the fuck, not having a specific answer
Yes,
or explanation. Yeah.
um, I like that there is some the idea that there is something holding it together.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
and
not just non sequiturs. Yeah.
yeah, it's not just datism, dadaism, whatever. Uh, but I don't know. No, I mean, and it doesn't enhance my appreciation of eight-legged freaks to have an article over explain what was already explained in dialogue. Um, but there's also another, if we're talking about Tarantino being canceled, like the whole strain, there is a whole strain of social justice criticism too that I think functions in a similar way, almost, where like that there is a style of review that is just, let me explain to you, like, let me translate for you how this movie is secretly homophobic,
Anti
secretly
whatever.
racist. It's
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
how it's embodying all
It's
of that, and it kind of like
the
ignoring
bingo
everything
card.
else.
It's a bingo card. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's also that the critic is positioning themselves as the interpreter. That I'm going to explain to you all of the latent racism that underpins this movie. That I'm going to explain, and there's not really latent racism in Tarantino movies. It's right there on the surface, and he kind of
I think he does a pretty good
intersects
job
that.
avoiding all that. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, he's got little boy racism in Reservoir Dogs, but for the most part,
yeah.
that's not a thing in these movies.
But I think it also just he doesn't leave, like, maybe Inglorious Bastards aside, or I don't know, Hateful Eight, I guess. But there's there's not a lot of subtext to parse because he will have,
If he's got an idea, he's going to tell you what that idea is.
exactly. He'll have
Yeah.
Jules Winfield explain to you the existential crisis he's having at gunpoint.
Hmm.
And that almost makes like the job of the critic in 20, 20, or I mean, maybe we're moving past some of this stuff, but at least over the last 10 years, makes their job kind of irrelevant or superfluous. And but at the same time, the artistry and like the command of craft that he has is so evident that you can't, like, he still gets the auteur branding, like the credibility that comes with that.
Well, yeah. I mean, just look at all the signifiers of Tarantino that we're able to make into a bingo card, and they're in all of them. That's he's got this stuff that is so clearly him we
Yeah.
we get a sense of who he is just by the fact that all this stuff is so apparent all in all the films. It's there, and this is what he is bringing to the thing. And in the end, isn't that just what our tourism is? You know, isn't it that more than this man is a real artist? Isn't it just a collection of ticks and recognizable patterns?
Yeah, but I think it's still
No.
interesting how, despite how exhaustively we've been able to catalog all of these ticks and motifs, if you want to call them something a little more complimentary, but he still sort of alludes like, what is he trying to say with any of this stuff? Like we're still not entirely sure about that. Like at Bastards, it's the most clear to us, and maybe that contributes to
Yeah.
why we like that the one the best. It
Well,
feels the
yeah.
most knowable. But
That is the thing. Yeah, I mean that's the one that's so goddamn smart that it is by clear acclamation the great one for us.
yeah,
So I mean, I don't know. Does that suggest that the rest are missing that? If
I don't
so,
know.
almost all movies are. Very few
Yeah,
films are Inglourious Bastards. So I don't know. I don't know if that's the thing that makes it so special. I don't know.
I think
Hmm.
part of what makes it special is that his interests are so sort of like narrow and they are myopic in a way, but that's the one that actually places them in a historical context that
In a
is,
context outside of his own world.
yes, outside of the world of film
Yeah,
and
or outside
trash
of
TV.
the
And
world of the Tarantino verse.
yes,
Yeah.
um, I mean, I suppose Django is kind of doing that too
Well,
in a
just
way,
less
but
good, just less
yeah,
successfully.
yeah, and it's in a pre-cinema time setting, which makes it he
Yeah,
can't
it's harder for him to have his
tie it
thesis
in.
there. Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah, it's harder to express that thesis in that way, but yeah, I think that's the one where it makes a case for the importance of his interests in a context that is broader than those interests themselves.
Well said. Yeah, I like that. That makes that's a good way of organizing that in my mind, I suppose. We've gone through this year. We've done
Yeah,
spent the back half of 2020 here talking about this guy, all his films, revisiting them. It's been pretty fun, right? It's been a
yeah,
good time. Yeah. Uh-huh.
it's one of the highlights of my quarantine. But
Yeah, right. It's been, it's
I
been
don't want to damn it
a
by
great week to
with
mark
faint
time.
praise because it's been like the only socialization that I've been able to do. Yeah,
Yeah. And I don't know. I would say in the end, I don't think I learned too much that I didn't already know from his films, and I think that goes to the fact that it's so on the surface. It's so it's covered in dialogue. Like
mhm,
this is explicitly like he'll tell you what if he's got a thought on his mind.
yeah.
And
There are not great depths to plumb and crack the code and translate.
yeah,
That's
like the changes and like just in the ranking, and like what
yeah,
moved up, what moved down, it was minimal. It was negligible. And the bigger themes that presented themselves, there were stuff I was well aware of going into this, I would have to say.
the
um
stuff that moved up and down for me. None of it was because like, oh, this movie finally like revealed itself to me on a thematic level. It was all just like,
not death proof, just a little maybe.
well, that's what actually. Well, I mean, it only moved up one spot, but yeah, that had the biggest revelation, I guess, of just saying that, oh, being
Hmm.
able to view Stuntman Mike through a lens of Weinstein was something um, that
Hmm.
wasn't. I mean, because in 2000, when was that made? I don't know. Probably saw it on TV in 2008 or something.
Yeah, something like that.
And at that time, I probably knew the name Harvey Weinstein, but I didn't know that he was, a prolific rapist. So
Right. Yeah.
what it wasn't available to me. But it's not. There hasn't been a lot of that. When things moved up and down, it was more just like, well, at this point, I'm a little tired of this, and this one,
Yeah,
um,
I'm older. Yeah.
yeah, and this one plays into something that now I appreciate a little more. I like, you know, I'm very tickled by the fact Jackie Brown being the most low stakes heist that's I've ever seen. Um,
Hmm.
but that's not, you know, that's not a thematic nugget that had to be mined. That's just something that I
Right.
appreciated. Found a word for this time.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think. I think this kind of gets to the prompt here. What we were originally approaching this as, like, are his films about something? Is this are there hidden depths? Is there something more, than the surface, which is, admittedly sort of genre-y and pulpy and, you know, uh, less highfalutin, less, less Scorsese's career-long investigation of Catholic guilt,
Mm.
and more samurai swords are cool. Um, I mean, this sounds bad, but not really. No, I mean, other than the good stuff in Bastards, he kind of. I mean, his virtues and his charm are kind of what you see is what you get, and I don't know. Is that a something that holds him back from the highest echelons of a filmmaker? Would you say? Does that separate
Would,
him from Kubrick?
would I say no? But would many people say yes? That
Hmm.
he doesn't he
I mean,
doesn't
it's
have
the
the
same thing with like
depth.
Spielberg with like
Yeah.
the populist thing. You
Yes.
know.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
That he is. Yeah. He doesn't have the, I guess, high-mindedness that we associate with capital G, capital A, great artists. Um, he creates the most beautiful and detailed surfaces than anybody else than than anybody else can. But
And it
there's
would
not
be a
a ton
huge
below that.
weakness if he were trying to do that. I think that would be a
Yeah.
bad thing if he were trying to be something other than what he clearly is.
Well, and I think maybe that's part of my slight remove from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is it feels like maybe that's one where I feel like maybe he's convinced that there's a little more below the surface than I am
Hmm.
convinced of. Um,
Yeah, I'll buy it for that one. Yeah, because the best thing about that movie is when it's just him hanging out and
yeah,
being Tarantino. Yeah. Hmm.
and I made the comparison of him to Michael Bay in a prior episode at some point. That in terms of being they're populist, it's just that Tarantino's interests are are narrower and weirder. um,
Well, he's also just technically a better filmmaker, just on a storytelling, camera shot placement, character development. He's just technically better than.
yeah, I mean, Bay is a fine technician. I think I don't not really critiquing him on that part, but yeah, you're right. Tarantino's a fantastic technician, so
Yeah.
there is that. But yeah, I mean, I think the answer we're coming to is that no, there's not a lot here. But I don't know. It's more than enough to be a
Yeah.
great artist in my book. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. I mean, it's pop art, I guess, in that
mhm.
sense. It's it's something that can also make $200 million at the box office. There aren't a lot of great artists that do that. There's the precious few. In fact, I don't think Scorsese's ever made a film that made $200 million, and he's probably one of the more populist auteurs out there.
Yeah, yes,
And
he is. But I mean, Spielberg's a good, I guess,
well, he's
comparison
the
on that
the
point.
grand champion kind of
Yeah,
marriage of art and
Spielberg.
commerce.
But
Yeah.
both of them, I think, they get knocked on our to an extent on like auteur ratings because they're more accessible than we're supposed to think auteurs are supposed to be to the unwashed masses.
Hmm.
Um, which
Yeah.
I mean, that's just snobbery, though, as far as I'm concerned.
100% snobbery. These are the films that matter to people, like these are the things that really find the audience,
Yeah,
that
they resonate
express,
in a
yeah,
way that Terrence Malick's movies do not resonate across pop culture. I mean,
afraid not. Yeah. Yeah, there's that time Chris Rock hosted the Oscars. One of my favorite sketches or Oscar bits that anyone has ever done was he went to a multiplex and shot him talking to regular patrons about their favorite movies of the year, and
mhm.
he asked them if they'd seen all the best picture nominees, and like every single one was like, nah, didn't see that.
Yeah,
Nah, I didn't see that. So what was your favorite movie from last year? I liked Saw. It was just stuff like that. And it was fantastic to see that in the context of the Academy Awards, because it was clear
yes,
no one knew how to take it. It was just sort of this
that is great because the
yeah,
Academy Awards obviously can be in addition to everything about that
couldn't be
being
more high on
so
itself. Yeah.
white and everything. But yeah, they couldn't be farther up their own butts about it's it's so predictable that the artist would win Best Picture because it's about the importance of the film industry. Like,
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. What
it's almost surprising that
assholes.
Inglourious Bastards didn't win because of that.
Well, I just don't think that they got it. I
Yeah,
think that kind of went over people's heads. I think maybe you could say that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was perhaps crafted a little bit to appeal to that crowd a little more directly.
Yeah, I probably succeeded in that to some degree. I'm sure it got Golden Globe nominations at least.
It was nominated for everything, man. It was Best Picture, but it was up there for all of it. Director,
right? I don't think it won Best Picture.
No, I didn't win any of it. Won Brad Pitt.
Having Hollywood in the title definitely helps in that regard. So, in the spirit of auteurs that have populist appeal and that do get some mainstream stickiness, we're going to move on to our next featured director in the new year, who I believe we decided is going to be David Fincher.
Yeah, we are committing to David Fincher right now. We're going to talk about David Fincher for 2021. First chunk of it here, and just released Mank. His new film came out on Netflix this week. So we'll eventually talk about Mank, but before that, we're going to talk about Fight Club.
Don't worry, we're not going to get to that in any sort of timely fashion. We'll make sure it's nice and stale before we bite into it.
Well, once everyone's ruminated on it, and once it wins all the Oscars, it's bound to win.
Yeah. That's true. It's black and white too.
It's about Hollywood and the importance. Okay, but
also,
but
huge
before we
check
talk
mark
about
for 20 years too old in the casting department. But we're going to start by digging into what's everybody's really most concerned about these days, which is Alien 3.
I think people still feel strongly about Alien 3. I think you'll find. I think this one's going to be, certainly more people care about this than The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which we'll also be talking about. The whole of the David Fincher film. There's 11 now, so very similar to what we did with Tarantino lengthwise. That's coming up in the new year. Thank you for joining us this far. Thank you for
if you made it this far, God bless you.
Yeah, seriously. We've been having fun doing it, and this is the last one that's coming out in 2020. Been a hell of a year. Hopefully next one will be better. And that'll do it for the QT question.
Set the expectations low. I think we can manage it.
Shouldn't be hard to clear this bar, right?
No, you really shouldn't. And I'm hopefully, John, thanks for doing this with me. And
thank you.
I hope you still have time for me once we get vaccinated and we can go outside again.
We'll have to see, right?
All right.
All the best. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.